I believe it is Wednesday afternoon. So let me begin by saying hello. I hope your afternoon is going well on this Wednesday. And it is my gift and my privilege to just bring you a little word of encouragement today, especially considering we at Book Marketing Pro Academy are diving into an area that can terrify some of us, and that is when God asks us to speak a message out loud. So, not on a page, but standing on a stage or behind a podcast microphone. And quite frankly, that can feel pretty scary. But I would venture to say we all know that while there are some messages that God gives us to write, there are also messages that He gives us to say out loud. And sometimes, believe it or not, they are the very same message. I think for those of us who maybe identify as predominantly writers, the page feels safe, right? We can sit with our words, we can wrestle with them, we can edit, we can start, we can stop, we can move that one sentence that is giving us fits 17 times if we want to before somebody sees it. But then God tends to do something terrifying to those of us who maybe begin communicating from a page. He asks us to open our mouths. He asks us to take the message that He has been forming in the quiet and carry it into a room, or maybe a Bible study, or a podcast interview, or a church, or a conference, or to 3 women who are just sitting across from you at the table. He may ask you to speak it in front of hundreds of people, and suddenly that message that we felt so comfortable writing becomes a message that terrifies you. But I want to encourage you with maybe something very pointedly today. If God is asking you to speak, don't just dismiss it because you see yourself as a writer. Your words may have been formed on a page, but they may not be meant to stay there, whether that sparks fear or not. Throughout Scripture, when God has called people to speak, He often begins by doing something in them first. Moses encountered God at the burning bush before he stood in front of Pharaoh. David knew God in the fields before his songs would become the words that generations would sing for years to come. Paul, he encountered Jesus on the road to Damascus before he was asked to speak and declare His name to nations. Their public messages came from private encounters with God, and I think ours often do too. Before God gives us a platform, He gives us a place of formation. Before He gives us words for others, He often works those words deeply, deeply into us. Before the message becomes something that we speak, it is often something that we have to live first. Maybe your message was born in a hospital room. I know mine was. Maybe it was born in a place of loss or in a place of grief. Maybe it came from a prayer that you prayed for years and years and years. Eventually, those places can become the most sacred of classrooms. A place where God eventually whispers, "Now tell them what I taught you there." that is when your story becomes something more than what has happened to you. It becomes something that God can use through you. And the great news about all of this is you don't have to feel ready. Sorry for those of you who thought you had to feel ready before you got up in that stage or you entered that sacred space. One of my most favorite things about Moses' story is when God is telling him to speak, Moses is immediately like, let me tell you something. I'm the wrong person for the job. I'm just not good at this. I'm not eloquent. I'm slow of speech and tongue. And I'm sure God smiled a bit before he gave the most remarkable response. It certainly wasn't a public speaking lesson or how to do your signature message. So I'll even burst my own bubble here. Instead, he says, who gave human beings their mouths? And then, now go. I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say. I love that. Now go. Not go when you're completely confident, not go when your platform is big enough, not go when you stop being nervous, not go when you've perfected your signature talk, not go when you've memorized every word. Just go. And then came the promise. I will help you speak. I will help you speak. Some of us are waiting for confidence when God is asking us for obedience. We often think that confidence has to come first, but so often confidence comes and it grows because we choose to obey. We take that first step. We say yes to that small opportunity. We share the story. We share the lesson. We stand behind the microphone when our knees are knocking and we are completely terrified. And you know what? God really does meet us there. Because the message, it isn't about us. And I think for us as writers, as speakers, as communicators, we often have to be reminded of that, because the world of publishing teaches us to think of things in terms of platforms and followers and sales and speaking opportunities and email lists and all of those things. They can be helpful tools, but they make a terrible definition of calling. Let me say that again. They make a terrible definition of calling, because your calling isn't measured by the size of the room. Your faithfulness isn't measured by the number of people who are listening, and the power, quite frankly, of your message isn't determined by how impressive your platform is. Sometimes God gives you a message for 1,000 people. Sometimes he gives you a message for one. And you know what? You may never know on this side of heaven what mattered the most. That changes how you walk into a room. Instead of asking yourself, how do I impress them? It becomes, how do I serve them? Instead of asking, will they remember me? The question then becomes, will they remember Jesus? Instead of the question, was I good enough? The question then becomes, was I faithful? with what God gave me. That is a completely different definition of success. And I think back even in my own journey, I was a trained public speaker, y'all. I could get up on stage and give a message without even thinking about it. I didn't need notes. I didn't need anything. I taught other people how to get up on a stage and speak. And yet in 2011, 6 weeks after a stroke, when somebody asked me to get up on stage, thinking I was completely devoid of the need of notes or anything else, I walked up thinking I could do all the things. I walked down from that stage feeling like a failure, determined never to walk onto that stage again. And yet, you know what? When I got home, even though I couldn't really hear it yet, I had a message from one of the women in the audience. And she said, Sarah, you will never know what it meant to see you struggle. The lesson was not in speaking perfectly. The lesson was me struggling to speak so that that sweet woman could know it was okay to struggle before you got on stage, and while you got on stage, and while you stumbled off, because God used me in my weakness. And y'all, that's what I've learned. We don't always get to decide how God will use the message that He's given us. Our responsibility is simply to steward it well. And maybe you're wondering whether you're supposed to speak. Maybe there's something that keeps stirring inside of you, a truth that you can't get away from, a scripture God keeps bringing you back to, a lesson that He has taught you that you can find yourself sharing over and over and over and over again. Pay attention to that. Because sometimes our speaking message isn't something we manufacture. It's something we uncover. It's already there, and God has been writing it into our lives. Our job is to recognize it, refine it, and faithfully steward it. But please hear this. You do not need to know where your message will take you before you speak. You don't need a 5-year speaking plan, although they're nice. You don't need a perfect website. You don't need to know whether you'll ever stand on a large stage. You just need to be willing to say, God, if you gave me this message, I'll give it back to you. Use my story, use my words, use my voice, even when it shakes. Open the doors that you want opened, close the ones that aren't meant for me. And wherever you put me, help me to speak faithfully. Because somebody may be waiting for your yes. Romans 10:14 asks a powerful question. How can they hear without someone preaching to them? Someone has to speak. Someone has to tell a story. Someone has to say, I've been there too. Someone has to say, God taught me this. Someone has to say, there is hope. Someone has to say, Jesus met me here. And maybe that someone is you. Not because your story is perfect, not because you have all the answers, but because you know the one who met you in the middle of it. So write the book, write the article, write the devotion, write the words God gives you. But when He opens the door and whispers, now say it out loud, don't let fear make the decision to say yes. Don't let insecurity make the decision. Don't let your comparison with someone else doing something different make the decision. Take the message He has written in your life. Take the truth He has taught you. Take the story He has redeemed and speak. You don't have to know how far your voice will carry. You simply have to trust the one who gave you the message in the first place. If God gave you something worth saying, perhaps it's time to say it out loud. I hope that encouraged your heart a little today. Thank you for the gift of speaking what I hope was life into those of you who are a little afraid. We're all afraid, but we have a God we can trust who's behind us. I'll see you tomorrow on Fun Filtered. And in the meantime, have a beautiful day, my friends. Until next time.